Okay, moving on. Speaking of disclosure, we are in this involved right now in a slow disclosure for whatever reason. But I believe probably the biggest reason might have to do with something that happened 25 years ago. I think a realization probably crept over people within the government, and they realized, well, yeah, if this happens again, this now, then there's going to be we got to start telling people the truth. We don't want to look like fools. So you have to remember, March 13th, we're almost at the 25th anniversary of the Phoenix Lights incident. And of course, if you recall the Phoenix Lights incident, I'm sure there's some people out there that don't recall it and don't even know about it. But back on March 13th, in the evening of March 13th, 1997, over 20,000 people in the Phoenix, Arizona area witnessed some sort of a giant flying V, gigantic. It was gargantuan, what people said. There's not a lot of video out of it. In fact, I think I've only ever seen one video of this thing. I believe it was on one of the James Fox documentaries about UFOs, and this thing was gigantic. But of course, in 1997, people weren't running around with cell phones like they are today, that have the capability of high definition video. Like we back then. I mean, there was over 20,000 people. Could you imagine if there were cameras, if there were cell phones? If everyone back then had a cell phone like we do today, like everybody has these cell phones with great video capabilities, right? To film things. I mean, in high definition. So if you have over 20,000 people, there's probably going to be at least 1,000. At least 1,000, that are going to pull out their cell phone and film it from all different angles. It would become undeniable. Now, the Air Force would later come out and try to claim that this thing was caused from flares, but the witnesses, the thing was just hovering in the air. It was moving slowly. It wasn't like when you listen to the witnesses, they said this thing was gigantic. Though, like, I remember seeing one guy that said you could have landed 50 fighter jets on the thing. It was so big. It was incredible. It had, I believe it had 6 lights on it, and it was like some sort of a giant flying V that basically, it was incredibly large, this thing, from what witnesses said. And there was a video of it that showed this thing, and you could just imagine what it would have been like to be there to see this thing. In fact, not only that, but there was officials that had seen it, that witnessed this thing. It was all police officers, all kinds of people from all walks of life. Over 20,000. Kurt Russell, actually, actor Kurt Russell saw this thing as he was landing his plane. He was flying in with his son into Arizona. The show was his son was going to meet with his girlfriend, and Kurt was taking him there. And as he was landing, he landed. He saw this thing, and he actually reported it. So there were a lot of people who saw this thing. But can you imagine right now if we have another event like that right now, if that ever happens again, where something over a major metropolitan area, something were to show up like the Phoenix Lights back in 97, 25 years ago. If that were to happen now, then that's going to be it. Everyone's going to know that there's no way. Okay, if you have, say there's 1,000 people with their cell phones out, something like this happens again. 1,000 people with their cell phones out filming this thing from all different viewpoints, different angles, different perspectives. And then could you imagine what the evening news is going to look like, right? With all the video compilations put together from all different angles to show how big this thing is, right? And then, when the questions come the next day, how is the government going to respond? They're going to say, well, they can't say it's theirs, right? Because they're not going to be able to produce it. They're not going to be able to show it. They're going to have to admit, well, we don't know what it was, where it came from. And everyone's going to know, okay, finally, that's it. I guess there's extraterrestrials here, period. No more nonsense. No more hiding the truth. So again, to get ahead of this potentiality, what the government has done over the last few years by admitting to these objects, admitting that there's UFOs, by doing this now, they're getting ahead of the game a little bit. So now if something happens, they could say, yeah, well, we told you, see, we saw these objects too. I mean, they gave us a little bit of video, not enough to sway everyone into realizing that there's an extraterrestrial presence on Earth, but just enough to get people, nudging them in that direction. All right, because I mean, still we have debunkers out there making idiots out of themselves online every day. They just can't accept this reality. However, if we have another Phoenix Light situation, and then in the early 2000s there was another incident, Stephenville, Texas. There was quite a few people, hundreds of people that saw some objects. Had we had the cell phone technology as we do today for that, it'd be game over. Okay, extraterrestrials are here. Period. End of story. So that's one of the reasons why I believe prompted this slow disclosure that we're undergoing right now, because people realize, the government, people within the Pentagon, whoever's in that secret group within the Pentagon that's been keeping this secret for all these years, realizes that if we ever have another Phoenix Lights incident, then we're going to look like idiots when we say, well, we never know, right? Because then there's going to be the absolute proof that there's extraterrestrials here, and it'll be undeniable, because the size of this gargantuan craft. I mean, nobody in the world has something the size of what they say this thing was. I mean, this thing was gigantic, enormous. There's no way nobody in this world has some kind of technology like that. And there was no sound. It made no sound. So that's one of the reasons. I believe that is one of the reasons for this slow disclosure, because of the technology that we humans have today with cell phones, basically cell phones. I mean, look what cell phones have done. I mean, all the things cell phones have been used in different kinds of, people were always complaining over the years about police brutality. What cell phones have shown that there is a lot of cases of police brutality out there. And guess what? It's going to show that there's actual UFOs at some point. If there's a major event like in Phoenix in 97, if that happens again, and hey, guess what? It could happen again. It could happen in Phoenix. It could happen in New York. It could happen in any major city in the world, actually. And there's going to be cameras, and people are going to be filming it if it ever happened again the way it happened that night on March 13th, 1997. If it happened again like that, look out. I mean, it's going to be game over. That will be it. The cat will be out of the cat will be out of the bag, and it will be over. It'll be a done deal.